Is the man who was thought to be the front runner in this year's French presidential elections, is he about to be forced out of the race? François Fillon is embroiled in scandal after accusations that he paid hundreds of thousands of euros to his wife for work in Parliament that she didn't do. That's the claim anyway. So it's shaping up, as a result of this, to be a pretty unpredictable French presidential contest. There are four main candidates. Benoit Hamon has been compared to Jeremy Corbyn and US Democrat candidate Bernie Sanders, owing to his left-wing rebel status. He beat the favourite to get the socialist nomination, Manuel Valls, to become himself the candidate for France's Socialist Party, which has been weakened by the quite incredible unpopularity of the current socialist president, François Hollande. He's not standing again for re-election. Now, Mr. Hamon's policies include plans to introduce a 32-hour working week, which would be the lowest in Europe by far, and legalise marijuana. François Fillon is a former centre-right prime minister. He was once called Mr. Nobody, who became the surprise winner of the centre-right Republican nomination in November, beating, among others, Mr. Sarkozy, who had been president before. But he's since then been engulfed by scandal over large payments to his Welsh wife, Penelope, who Mr. Fillon claims works as his parliamentary assistant, but people are still finding it hard to work out what she actually did. His children were also in different ways on the payroll as well. He's put forward what by French standards is quite a radical programme to roll back the state. He wants to raise the pension age to 65, and he certainly said in the earlier days that he wanted to slash public sector employment by 500,000. He doesn't talk so much about that now. Benefiting from François Fillon's woes is the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen of the National Front. She's pledged a referendum on France's membership of the EU, but she's also targeted voters disillusioned by the traditional left. And she's been running quite a left-wing economic policy to go with a nativist social policy. She wants to lower the retirement age to 60, which is interesting, and to bolster public services. Now, Emmanuel Macron was unknown in French politics until he became François Hollande's economy minister in 2014. He has fashioned his own cross-party organisation. He calls it En Marche, with an exclamation mark, and he likes to take policies from both the left and the right. He's a former Rothschild investment banker. He would scrap France's 35-hour working week for younger workers, but he would make older workers work fewer hours. So these are the main runners and riders. There are many more, of course, as well, but these are the top four. We're joined now by the French journalist and commentator, Bénédicte Pavois. Welcome to the programme. Now, let me ask you this about Mr. Fillon. Is he hauled below the waterline now?
There is a sense of panic. It is really snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, because he trounced former President Sarkozy and indeed another former Prime Minister, Alain Juppé, in something that was not, until recently, French at all, and that is primaries. The first people to do primaries were the socialists at the last election in 2011 for the presidential election, and it was the first time that the centre-right did them, and they were very successful. They got 4 million voters. So it was a democratic success, but a huge surprise since Mr. Juppé had been for months, 18 months. Here comes the word, the polls.
He was the front runner to get it.
And the next French president. However, the person who actually beat him very comfortably was François Fillon, the ex-Mr. Nobody, with the Welsh wife.
Right, but what I'm trying to move forward, though, is to find out, because more revelations came out from Canard Enchaîné this week. There is talk that he may have to stand down. He said if prosecutors move against him, and they're rummaging through his office at the moment, he would stand down, but at the moment he's fighting it. Will he survive?
The answer to that is nobody knows. He believes he will. He's asked for 15 days grace from his party who as recently as last night in Parliament was saying they absolutely back him. He's saying it's a plot from the media. He's also saying...
And the Socialist Party, he said, too.
Yes, but not only. He's also saying it's a coup d'etat institutionnel. It's almost a coup d'etat against
So
him.
we don't know if he's going to stand down. If he did, because I've got a couple of other things to... If he does stand down, will the Republicans have to have another primary election?
There are many scenarios. That one, I think, would take too long. There is no plan B. You're quite right, and that is the crucial question. But I understand, as of right now, that he can't last another 15 days. It is thought that actually Alain Juppé, who had ruled himself out 2 days ago and as recently as last night, is now being approached by senior members of the Républicains to say that he really should think again.
Right, now let me come... No, hold on, we've not got much time.
Okay.
Let me come to the socialists now, because they've chosen, against all expectations, which is why this is so unpredictable, by far the most left-wing of the primary candidates.
A kind of Jeremy Corbyn. Yep.
Well, and more, I would suggest. Even Mr. Corbyn hasn't suggested taxing robots. But it didn't matter who they chose. The socialist doesn't get through to the second round and the playoff.
You have to put that now in a different tense, Andrew. Didn't. Because of the situation that is unfolding as we speak. Look, Guénard Enchaîné revelations a week ago, huge programme tonight, where the Sunday Telegraph, the French media have found, France 2, my colleagues, have found an extract of Penelope Fillon stating that she was not a parliamentary assistant to her husband, that she never worked in communication for him. This is serious stuff. If it really explodes
then he's
tonight,
toast.
It sounds like he is toast. And in that case, you know what? Game on. Then the socialist, Benoît Hamon, has just spent an hour with the French president. OK, the president didn't come out and greet him and didn't. That means it's not a straight ballet.
No, but the French president had recently a 4% approval rating.
No, well, precisely. So Benoît Hamon wants to keep his distance.
Him.
Because clearly there will be some relaying of information and there is going to be a whole jockeying of positioning. And in the next week, we could see a completely... I mean, the bets are off.
The bets are off, which is great because it makes it unpredictable. But even if it's unpredictable, all the polls would suggest that who gets into the second round for the playoff is going to be between the Republican candidate, Madame Le Pen, and Mr. Macron.
That's right. The unknown, extraordinary situation. You cannot underline it enough. He is unelected. People thought it was a bubble and that it wouldn't last. So could this unelected ex-Rothschild banker become the next French president? It is possible. Will Marine do very well? Look, there's a French phenomenon you are very well aware of, and that is what is called the Republican Pact. In France, unlike in the United States, there are 2 rounds. So people often vote as a protest in the first round, and in the second one, they actually vote for somebody they believe will be the president. So that system saved, many people say, France from Marine Le Pen's father back in 2000.
Indeed, because Chirac won and the socialist campaign slogan was vote for the crook, not the fascist. I was referring to Mr. Chirac as the crook on this. It is interesting, though, that in this year of which many of us thought could be the year of the European insurgency, that the phenomenon of Brexit and Mr. Trump could well come to European elections, it is now at least possible, I put it no higher than that France will elect a very centrist, mainstream president called Mr. Macron.
Well, I have an interest to declare. Last week I placed a substantial bet on Mr. Macron.
Oh, you did?
It seems to me that not only could he capture the centre, but he would be attractive to the left, given that the left have elected a fairly mad candidate of their own. So from his position, I would have
radical,
thought...
I would say.
But isn't he considered an independent? Isn't that the attraction?
He's actually appealing to both. He's saying, I'm not right, I'm not left. And really, right now, I mean, it could be very possible that he would be. I know the Anglo-Saxon press, not this programme, love to believe that France will have a Marine Le Pen president.
Do they?
But
I've never seen any British paper say that.
No, I'm sure you haven't.
Well, name one that has.
I beg your pardon?
What would name a British paper that says Madame Le Pen?
No, I said the press. I'm talking in general terms. Yeah. I keep on being asked about Marine Le Pen, which has not been the concentration of this interview. No. I was making a point.
All right. If it is Mr. Macron, and I still think you have to make it a big if, because it is so unpredictable, he won't have any MPs in Parliament.
Well, this is where he's trying to already, and he desperately needs to do that in terms of his support. He needs to try and get people on board.
But he doesn't have a party.
He doesn't have a party.
He has a movement. But is he going to run MPs for
well, look, we're in uncharted
the parliamentary elections, remind me, are
weeks later.
Weeks after the
Yes.
presidential. The first round of the presidential is April the 23rd. The second round is May the 7th. That will determine who the president. And then a couple of weeks after that, a new parliament is elected. He will not be able to run MPs, deputies for that assembly.
Well, you know, that is reasoning how things have been in the past. But I think what we're witnessing, I think what we saw with Brexit, I think what we've just seen with Mr. Trump, and what we're certainly witnessing in France, French voters did not want former presidents. They didn't want a rerun of the previous election. They didn't want Mr. Sarkozy, so some say he's in the starting blocks, but I think that might not be a good idea. They didn't want Mr. Hollande, who apparently is somewhat regretting that he's now not running, but I don't know why that would be.
Too late.
Anyway, too late, as you say. And the fact is, by the way, that by the 9th of March, that's another very important point, watch the 9th of March, because by then, whoever's going to stand for the French centre-right has to not only have said an approved candidate, but have 500 signatures of mayors or MPs. But yes, the question is open about
All right,
how
we're going to have
Parliament will
to
go.
stop it there, but we will come back to it because it is in its own way just as interesting as the American presidential election last year. Thank you for marking our card.